Katya.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Kim.
And welcome. So, being misunderstood. So, we all talked about having some conversations with people where they don't understand, and we have to respond somehow. We have to love these people and we have to understand where they're coming from in order to have any conversation, or not to have a conversation, but at the same time not to have a fight. So what are your experience, guys?
Well, I'm finding at the moment that it seems that I think with a lot of all the energy shifting that's going on, and also all of the political upheaval and unrest that's happening in the US, so reflecting in the rest of the world, there's a lot of misunderstanding happening. There's a lot of confusion, and people are making a lot of assumptions about what you may or may not believe in. So one example is I'm temping at a vet clinic at the moment, and there's a new vet nurse. And on her first day, she came storming in and she was like, "Oh, Trump is such an asshole and blah, blah, this. And I'm so glad that he's lost and Biden's amazing and all this kind of stuff." And the vet actually thinks that Trump's great. And I think Trump's great. So we both just nodded politely, you know. And it seems I'm noticing more and more that a lot of people seem to be completely unhinged. You know, it's like they're not grounded on anything anymore. So it's almost like you're talking to them across a really large, noisy space. So I'm finding with me, and maybe it's just me not communicating properly, it might be that, but sometimes I'll say things and I can see it being completely lost in translation as it hits the other person's ears. And then what they say back is completely different. You know, I was laughing with my friend about this the other day. So, for example, I might say to them, "Hi, how are you?" And they'll look at me really offended, like I've just said, "You look really fat today." You know, and it's just kind of like, no, that's not what I said. That's not what, but they're hearing something different. And I'm finding also that people recently seem to, not everyone, but sometimes people are explaining things to me very, very slowly. You know, like I'm very stupid, you know, so I might say something like, I go into a shop and say, "Hi, do you sell apples?" And they'll go, "Apples? No, we have no apples today." I'm like, okay, I'm sure I said that in English, and I'm sure I said it at normal speed. And I don't know why you're talking very slowly. That's really weird.
Bizarre.
I know. So it's kind of strange. So I don't know, what I'm saying doesn't seem to be translating to what people are hearing necessarily. I mean, it can be funny sometimes, but
yeah.
Maybe they're feeling your energy.
Maybe.
And they don't even hear what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe it is, because it is like they're being scrambled a little bit sometimes, because they'll look at me like, "What?" I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But it can be funny.
I've been noticing it most recently, and I it's funny because I didn't really think about this until we started talking about the topic, was with my mom, because I'll say certain things to her, and you know, there's a chance that this has always happened, but I just kind of like maybe ignored it. But it's like certain things, either asking questions but not getting the answer to the question I asked, and it's like now we're somehow having a different conversation. I can't think of like an exact example that happened recently, but something that happened yesterday with moving a lot of my stuff back to New York. She said to my father, she said, "We have to reconfigure Danielle's closet." And I wasn't down there for that, but I go down there and my dad says, "Hey, you know, Mom said that we have to reconfigure your closet." And I was like, gave him this face like, what are you talking about? And he's like, "Yeah, that's what I thought." Like, you know, sort of like. And then my mom was convinced that she had a conversation with me the other night where she talked about reconfiguring my closet. And I said yes. And I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm telling you right now that that did not happen." I've been very kind of focused on doing all of this stuff, moving my stuff back into my room. Like, I know what I'm doing with it, you know, just. And my mom really likes to help with organizing and cleaning. It's something she really enjoys doing. I have no problem with her helping me out. But the thing is if I let her do it, she's going to do it her way. And then I'm just going to have to, you know,
Redo
modify
it.
it. Yeah. To the way that I feel like is comfortable for me. So I was just focused. And usually because I don't have a lot of energy, that's something that'll zap my energy, is like moving stuff and organizing, because it just feels so overwhelming. But I felt this drive to do it, and I was doing it myself, kind of thing. Like it just felt like the proper movement. So I was just like, kept being like, no, 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 like every step of the way when she was offering different things. I was just like, let me do it. I was like, I thank you for offering to reconfigure my closet. I was like, I'm going to do what I need to do once all my laundry is done and I have all my clothes in there. If it needs to be reconfigured, I'm more than happy to take everything out and we can do it. But just let me, keep going with my thing. But she was like adamant about the fact that we had this conversation. I said I wanted it done, and I was just like, I don't know what planets we're living on, but that conversation did not happen. So very interesting times for sure.
But I know
That's
you mean.
interesting.
I have some conversations with people that are doing that as well. Like, I told you that, and I know you didn't. I'm sure you didn't. Like this crazy woman I did admin for that now has finally fired me. Thank God. But most of her emails said, "I want you to do this as I've asked you previously." I'll go, okay, I'll search for whatever it is. There's no email ever record of what she said. But she's like, I've asked you twice. Like, well, no, you asked somebody or something, or you imagined it, or maybe you asked another version of me. I don't know, but it wasn't this one.
I do notice for myself is if I write in emails, I'll think I'm being clear about something, and then I'll look back and say, okay, I could have been clearer here. And this is why this person isn't understanding quite, what's happening. So I do understand. I'm not always going to put it on the other person that they're the ones misunderstanding me because I'm being perfectly clear, right? So I have noticed that too in the reply that I get. I'm like, okay, I guess I could have been clearer about like this time doesn't work for me for X reason. I'll give the example just so people kind of know. I said, hey, is there any way I can pick up my stuff from the office early? I was planning on leaving for, the Thanksgiving holiday. But what I didn't realize is that I didn't specify which day I was planning on leaving, which I could have sworn I did, right? But looking back in the email, I'm like, nope, there's no indication here. And she said, oh, do you not see any times on Friday? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I meant I was supposed to leave on Wednesday. I was like, I'd like to get out of here as soon as possible because I really wanted to get back before Friday. Anyway, so I cleared that up with her. But I was like, wow, I can't believe, I would have been so sure that I said, Wednesday and as early as possible and stuff like that. And it's just not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying it's definitely everyone else always. It's certainly me as well. But there just seems to be more and more miscommunication. And it is like there are walls of sound in between, from my experience, walls of sound between me and other people sometimes. And depending on who it is, there's not with everyone, but with certain people. I mean, like this vet nurse that's just started. Sometimes when she talks to me, it's like she's shouting across an abyss. I'm sitting right next to her going, oh my God, that was so loud, but it seems to be, she feels that she needs to raise her voice to reach me somehow or something. I don't know. And I find that with the people that seem to be kind of ungrounded or unhinged or whatever it is, I mean, maybe it is just an energy scramble or something, but sometimes I'll say something that I think is clear, and it may be that I'm not being clear, but let's say if it's something basic, like, could you please pass me a pen? And I get this completely blank look. And I go, oh, could you pass me a pen? And they'll go, here's an apple. It's like, no, pen, please. And it's like, no, a brick. No. And sometimes I'm kind of like, is it me? Have I started speaking a different language or something? I don't know. Maybe I'm not aware of it. But it's kind of funny. And I think in my perspective, people seem to be projecting a lot more at the moment. And I don't know whether they actually are or whether it's just more obvious. Or maybe I'm just noticing it more, I don't know, but people seem to be projecting a lot more judgment than I've noticed before. A lot of thought comes through their perception of you. And I don't know if it's me shifting or everything's shifting or just it's becoming more clear, it's uncovered. But like, for example, this woman I used to do admin for, so some of her leadership team emailed me last week and they had to ask me a couple of questions about things. Doesn't matter what, but the way they emailed, it was like you'd email a child, and one of them is the head of IT. And he emailed me like I'd never seen a computer before. I didn't know what a mouse was. And I didn't know how to right click and save. So he explained it all out. It was like, so you click on the mouse on the right, you right click, it's called, and then you save. And he almost explained what saving was. And so it was, she'd obviously told him that I'm not very IT literate, which is her perception. But it was just so obvious that this had been passed on. And it was just so strange because I was looking at this email going, wow, that's the kind of email you'd send to a child. You know, so obviously she thinks I'm completely stupid and incompetent, and she's passed that on to these people. And it was just very, very clear. And I wasn't offended by it because it was, you know, what it was, but it was just very strange because you kind of look at it and you go, am I being really stupid and incompetent? Maybe, well, I guess I am to her or to them, but wow, okay. You know, it's just peculiar. But, so I don't know what that was, but anyway.
I don't really interact much with different people, so I haven't had that experience of misunderstanding. The interactions that I had, well, actually, there was no interaction. I was just standing at school, and all the parents could talk about was how many COVID cases are around. And I'm rolling my eyes. I was like, well, we have little kids here. Is it really all we can talk about? So I wasn't participating in that conversation. And anything else? The only thing that I actually figured out for myself is certain things, unless you have some spiritual knowledge, you cannot argue. Like about certain politics, about vaccines, or things like that, because it's hard to explain from a different perspective, because when you look at a lot of evidence, or at least what's available, it's hard to argue what's out there because a lot of it is hidden. So I was like, I'm not going into argument anymore. I stopped doing it, which is actually quite nice because there is nothing to protect, would you say? I don't know. I mean, I know it's good to stand behind your truths, but if you know that maybe I don't have the strongest arguments on my side, but if you know that persons are not going to change their opinion, then why to waste my energy? I'm not going to sway them one direction or another. So in that case, I'm just, not necessarily they keep pushing my opinions or what I know about it. I was like, okay, that's your choice. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel Danielle and I think, spoke about this at the end of the last podcast after you had to go. And we were just talking very briefly about the fact that it feels different now. So it's kind of not about strongly, speaking out about things. It's more just holding center and holding your core and just sort of, I mean, I've been noticing that with me as well, that, like, for example, this vet nurse that came in, she was ranting about Trump and how crap everything is. And I just looked at her and smiled and was like, okay, like, that's your opinion. That's fine. There was no need in me or any push in me to say anything or to contradict her, because you could see she was so strongly in that belief that nothing would have swayed her. Nothing would have even opened her mind to something different, because she was so obviously believing everything that's being said. And like you say, there's not a lot of mainstream news facts that you can throw back and go, well, actually, this paper said something different or whatever, And like you say, unless you know about what's happening underneath and maybe have more of a spiritual understanding, there isn't that kind of argument. And you can tell with people sometimes that they just want to complain and they want to slate people, or like she was talking to one of the customers that came in the other day, and they were both going, oh my God, we'll be glad when we get that idiot out of the White House, and blah, blah, blah. Massive, great big complaining session. And I was just watching it. I didn't participate, but I was just looking at the energy of it and looking at both of them. And it was so rigid, it was like they were in little steel boxes. And it looked really painful to be in there because they kept throwing themselves against the walls and they were hurting themselves basically. And I just found that kind of fascinating. It was just interesting to see, because I think with people that may want to bury their head in the sand or may want to not open their minds to anything possibly being true, you're just talking to their bum, really, aren't they? Because their head's in the sand, so it's like there's no point.
That's a good point. Yeah, I always try to say for myself too, to try to entertain all sides of things, because I don't want to be in the same boat, but just on the other end of the argument, you know. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, and because he's really good at trying to seek out information from different sides, different points of view. And the way he put it to me yesterday, he was just like, my Kool-Aid tastes better, you know, because they say, you know, you drink the Kool-Aid, and he was kind of saying, like, you drink the Kool-Aid, I guess, of one side or the other. And he's like, mine just tastes better.
Yeah.
We were just talking about like the energy of like the Millions MAGA March happened yesterday in DC. A lot of Trump supporters showed up, and my dad said they were interviewing a lot of people that were there, and he's like, the energy was just great. Everybody was talking, they were making good points, very sane, rational. Like no one was coming off like, if this doesn't happen, we're gonna burn it all down or anything like that. So I just thought that was funny. He's like, yeah,
Yeah. It's a
Kool-Aid
good way of
just tastes
putting
better.
it. But again, it's interesting having that perspective and then seeing what's on the news or what's here. You know, it was that violence erupted in Washington and protesters were threatening to burn buildings and all this kind of stuff is what it was reported as over here, which is, yeah, you know, much of the same, but interesting how it just continues to fuel the fire of, you know, people's beliefs.
So they were saying like at this march that people were threatening to burn stuff down?
Yeah.
You see, I mean, I didn't watch any of the news coverage myself, but that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because when some people are going to support a cause, because, you know, people don't believe that they've lost yet. So for there to be destruction involved in that, just, it doesn't logically connect for me that that would be the outcome. I did hear about people who were opposed, you know, who really hate Trump and all of his supporters, that they tried to incite some conflict later on in the day when most people had left. Again, I didn't see anything firsthand, so I don't know, but that logically makes more sense to me.
Yeah, but none of it makes sense. You know, the reporting, none of it makes sense. It's all just an angle, isn't it? You know, so
framing, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what a lot of people were talking about, that you will see there won't be any violence because these are all peaceful Trump protesters. So it's interesting how they wanted to throw in some violence because there was none of that. I mean, I haven't been there present, but I've seen a lot of the little footage that were posted and people who were there commenting how peaceful it was and that all the Trump protesters are not throwing, you know, any threats or any violence or anything like that. And then, you know, it was also some other side of the news media showing the opposite side of Biden, where it's all linked to the Black Lives Matters and all this Antifa and all of that, how violent it was. But it was interesting that, of course, the mainstream media doesn't want to show the peaceful part of it. They have to throw in something that hasn't happened, or at least not what I've seen from the videos that I've looked at. So that's interesting.
But it is interesting because it just goes to show that when people have expectations, you know, the mainstream media is feeding into people's expectations of what they think is going to happen or should happen or what they'd assumed would happen. That, you know, Trump is being a baby, he's refusing to leave, all his supporters are threatening to burn down America, all of this stuff, which has not happened and probably, I can't see it happening. But it goes to show with what happens with misunderstandings, you know, because that's what happens even in the silly examples I gave earlier, you know, people not understanding what I was saying. They had expectations. So maybe the person who tried to very slowly tell me that there were no apples was racist and assumed that I didn't speak English. You know, there was an expectation there. And they probably heard me saying it in a completely different way to the way that I said it. But I think that seems to be coming more and more to light, or is becoming more and more obvious, that all people's projections and expectations are really there. It's like the walls I was talking about, you know, between you and them. They're throwing up these walls of projection, all these walls of expectation. And so they're not going to hear you through them if what you say goes against what both of those are. And it's interesting. I'm just finding it quite fascinating to see, because it's very, very clear. So some people have these huge walls and some people have none. And the ones that don't, the conversation flows. There's less misunderstanding. But those that are, you know, not only have the walls, but also their heads buried in the sand. It's like, well, you know, your bum's surrounded by walls, you know, so perfectly safe, you know. So yeah, it's funny, interesting times. Yeah.
I definitely have to agree with you, Kim, because I was thinking about that after I had shared about the conversation with my mom, because I was like, oh, she must have this sort of idea of me that like I'm going to accept whatever help she's willing to offer, which, you know, may have been true in the past. That rings true to me as to why she was sure that I said yes when I'm sure that I said no. And if I need you to, I'll let you know. So.
Well, she probably also can't accept the changes because you've grown since she knows you, you've matured, and she's probably still seeing you as a little baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes to the other people's needs as well. That's sometimes where the misunderstandings or misinterpretations can happen, because like, you know, Katya was saying, she's looking at you as her baby, and there's that need to be needed. And if you're saying, no, I don't need you right now, that's part of her identification that's gone, you know. So she's like, no, but this is what we base our relationship on, you know.
Right.
But it happens, I think it happens a lot as well, that people have this need for whatever it is. And it feels like at the moment, these times of such change, we have to let go of all of our needs, you know, everything that we think we need or we think that we want, because it's just looking more and more clear as people are holding on to these needs and wants, how they are just anchors. You know, they're just weighing them down, slowing them down. And we just have to let go of them all because they're all outdated now, you know. Well, that's how it seems to me anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always hard when for mothers when their kids grow up, because they still feel that they need it and they need to protect their kids. And when they realize this is not the case, you know, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to let it go. They have to experience it. They have to go through it. I haven't been there, but from what I've seen, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd imagine it's very hard. I mean, my mother still hasn't let go of either of us. She thinks we're both children, and, you know, I'm nearly 50. So, you know, it's taken her a while. But yeah. But I think generally as well, I wasn't just speaking about your mother, Danielle, but you know, generally speaking, it just seems that these needs and wants are weighing more heavily.
Yeah, and my mother, she wanted to be a mom for so long. She like tried to get pregnant for 6 years. So, you know, I think a lot of I guess maybe her identity is wrapped up in being a mom. So makes a lot of sense. I'm happy I can be here in this time with her though, you know, to try to just help at least energetically stabilize some of the stuff that's going on, and try to watch my projections as well, and you know, keep as much high vibration and peace as possible, because just everything else, you know, that's going on energetically, collectively, it's like giant waves in the ocean, and we're in this tiny boat.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in a tiny boat with people kind of gathered down at one end and threatening to jump out the other end, and you're like, "Whoa, just stop moving!"
You're right. We don't need any more waves than what we've got already.
And stop fighting in the corner, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. But I think it's also, you know, it's also an opportunity as some of this confusion and misunderstanding comes up, like you were saying before, Danielle, to kind of look at where in you it might be, you know. So I realized the other day that as somebody was talking to me like I was stupid, I was realizing that all my life I've kind of gone along with that a little bit, you know, in that if somebody misunderstands what I say, or, you know, kind of doubts that I'm knowing what I'm talking about, I'll just kind of go along with it. And that feels not true. So it was good to be shown that, so I could kind of go, actually, no, I need to work on honing the way I say things a bit more clearly in some circumstances, so that somebody doesn't think that I'm completely illiterate or, you know, or brain dead. You know, it might be quite nice not to be treated as such. So that was a really nice reflection. Well, when I say nice, it was a good reflection to have, to be able to see that. Because, you know, when people have done that in the past, I'd kind of nod and go, oh, okay, thank you, you know, kind of thing. And then I reflected on it and thought, well, why am I thanking you for telling me that I'm stupid? That's just very strange behavior.
What did you say to those people who told you about apples?
I kind of went, okay. And they went, thank you, bye. Okay, I'm leaving now. All right then. Because it was when I was younger, I used to get a little bit offended by that because I was a bit overly sensitive to racism, or what I perceived as racism. Because back when I moved to the UK, there didn't tend to be as many Asian people that spoke English fluently, or maybe people weren't used to it. So there would always be the assumption when I walked in somewhere that I couldn't speak English properly. And I remember at university, I was put in, we were all assigned rooms, you know, in halls in the first year. And I was put in the Asian corner with all the other Asians. All the other Asian students were put in one corner of the building. And I remember thinking, what? That's so, you know, stereotypical. So yes, I used to take a lot of offense to it, and I'd kind of talk back and say things. And then that sort of changed to, oh, well, you know, whatever. And now I kind of think, well, maybe I need to not take offense to it, but maybe not go along with it, you know, so it's finding the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it might not have been racism, but it just, that was the only reason I could think of.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Or maybe she just thinks that the question was stupid. I feel like sometimes
Yeah,
that'll
maybe.
happen. You know, it's like, well, my whole store is right here. Do you see any apples or something? You know, I'm not saying that she's not racist, but I know that there are people where it just like, because I've caught myself doing this too. And I'm like, that's a stupid question. And I'm like, wait, let's walk this back. You know, like there's probably a good reason why this person's asking a question, you know?
Yeah. Well, in this situation, there was a little box that said apples that had none in them. So I kind of thought, well,
okay.
do you have any more? But yeah, well, that's such a trivial example. But anyway,
but it's excellent. It's really good, though, I think, to exemplify what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting times.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's a weird thing with how we were talking about people holding on to their perspective so much and wanting to stay locked into that and not unwillingness to look at other things. Again, having a conversation with my dad about this yesterday, and I was like, I just don't know how things are going to be for those people in the moving forward, because I'm of the firm belief that there is going to be truth, a certain level of truth that's presented, that people who are locked into their version of reality will have a very difficult time accepting. And I get concerned for them, and that, you know, it's probably an opportunity on my part to do some processing around what I believe their experience will be and my judgments around that. But that's something that's very real for me at times. When I think about it, I'm like, wow, I don't know how that's gonna be. It's just it's almost painful to me to think about what it would be like, you know, if I was in that situation, and then knowing what I know, you know, receiving that information and how I perceive that I would feel. So,
But you know what? Sometimes when it's really overwhelming and there is so much, that's really a great opportunity for growth. That's when the death happens, really, because there's just so much that you can only hold so much in your steel box. At some point, it's going to overflow. Like no matter what, if you keep feeding it in, at some point it will burst. And when it will burst, that's when the evolution happens. So looking at it from a different perspective does help a lot, that it will hopefully help them to let go. Because you can't do otherwise. Otherwise, they'll have to let go, right?
well, yeah, I think that's the concern, is like what happens if they really are still trying to hold on and there's no holding on anymore. You know what I mean? But
Well, then it's their choice at the end of the day. It's the choice of the soul, and there's not much you can do. You can provide the support, of course. You can hold the center, but it's a choice of each individual.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They'll let go or not let go.
Thank you for listening to us. This was our conversation on misunderstandings. And if you liked what we've talked about today, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to hear our upcoming podcast. And thank you very much. If you're hearing this, that means you made it to the end. Yay! See you next time.